Horizontal blue stripes, pardon me, 2 horizontal stripes, there's a red, and 3 red stars running across the middle. It's basically our flag, and our flag came first. Although DC residents have been known to point out that apparently it was Washington's family crest. But it was not a flag. Are you from DC? You were looking at each other. Rude. Outrageous. All right, let's move on down the river. First buildings on the tour are 2 of the most glamorous buildings in Chicago. Head to the right. Those 2 bright white buildings are phenomenal structures. They're the Wrigley buildings, built in 1924. Long been some of the best known, well-loved buildings in Chicago for 2 reasons I can think of. First of all, the outside of the structure is gorgeous day or night. You're looking at several different shades of glazed white terracotta, especially beautiful at nighttime when the facade is illuminated, as it has been almost every night since the buildings were done in 1924. They're also well known and loved for the namesake. That's the Chicago-founded Wrigley Gum Company, of course. Sadly, the Wrigley buildings are no longer home to Wrigley. They left the buildings the same year they sold the towers. That was way back in 2011 when they sold them. They sold at an astounding price. I remember reading about it. I couldn't believe it. Those 2 gorgeous, iconic, and well-located towers sold in 2011 for $33 million. If you're not sure if that's a lot or a little, I'll tell you, 7 years later, they sold again, this time at a more realistic $255 million. The recession was bad. Looking straight ahead of us now, technically the right side of the river, you're looking at the 2nd tallest building in Chicago, Trump International Hotel and Tower from 2009. It's the first of many buildings on the tour that has an example in the design of what's called contextualism. That's simply when a building's design is inspired somehow by what's around it. In this case, you'll see the tower has several setbacks. Those mimic the roof heights of surrounding buildings. First setback right above us, for example, same height as the roof of the Wrigley buildings. The other setback way up higher on the side is actually the same height as the top of a black boxy building. You can't quite see it coming up next on the right. But of course, pointing out the obvious, Trump's name, kind of a lightning rod these days, can't be too careful, but I will tell you, I got a joke approved by the bosses just 2 weeks ago about this building. Are you ready for it? Trump Tower is a terrific building. Some people apparently, not sure, sometimes I've had to say the word tariff afterwards just so people really get it. I don't know if that's a good joke or not. Should I keep it? All right, thank you. None of that stuff matters, though. Favorite fact about the building is that it was used for the last scenes in the movie The Dark Knight. If you saw that movie, you might remember it ended with the Joker and Batman fighting each other in a partially constructed high-rise. That was that building before it was done. Do you folks want more or less Batman facts on this tour? More? Okay. Bruce Wayne's penthouse is in the hotel to the left of the building with the horizontal bands of blue and silver. If you look at the top, you'll see the words Royal Sonesta. His penthouse was right below those words. Many scenes shot there. Also, many scenes shot in the black boxy building coming up on the right. This is where practically all the government scenes were shot for that movie, with the mayor, the commissioner, the DA. This building is a simple black box, but it's actually an architectural masterpiece designed by one of the world's most famous architects in the mid-1900s. His name was Ludwig Mies van der Rohe. Born in Germany, he spent most of his life in Chicago, and that's the style he pioneered that made him so famous. Some call it the international style, some call it the modernist style. It follows his three-word ethos for architecture, which was less is more. That was meant to convey the idea that his buildings were practical, stripped-down structures. That building's practical for at least one reason I can think of. There are only columns on the perimeter, so every floor is completely customizable. There are no interior load-bearing walls or columns. Mies van der Rohe also taught architecture in Chicago for decades. Unsurprisingly, many of his students designed buildings a lot like that one, steel and boxy, although one of his students designed these 2 towers on the right, the exact opposite of what Mies van der Rohe would have done. That's a sign that he hated his teacher, I think. These were done by a guy named Bertrand Goldberg in the mid-1960s. They are 2 of the most recognizable towers in Chicago. The name is Marina City for 2 reasons. There's a marina at the bottom, and they were built to be a city within a city. They were jam-packed with amenities when the buildings were finished in the 60s, because at that time, nobody else lived around here. So if you chose to live in these towers, they basically had to provide everything for you, and they practically did. A lot of the original amenities are gone, but they do still have the original marina, 13 floors of parking per building, and when they were first built, the residents also had access to a bank, a dry cleaners, a grocery store, a movie theater, a bowling alley, a health club, a swimming pool, a cocktail lounge, a barbershop, a salon, and their own ice skating rink. The ice skating rink closed in the 1990s after somebody tragically skated off the edge of the structure. I'm just kidding. Many of you were taking this tour very seriously. They did have an ice skating rink, that part's true. Just wanted to see if you were paying attention, I'm sorry. But wouldn't that have been funny? I thought so. All right, moving on ahead to the right. After the bridge, you got the oldest building on this branch of the river. Just for context, I should point out we have 3 branches we're going to see today, one of them pretty briefly, but we have a Y-shaped river system, 3 branches coming together at a central point. We'll be there in about 5 minutes. So the oldest building on this branch, at least, is the reddish-brown brick building after the bridge. It's from 1914 It's called the Reed Murdoch Center. Reed Murdoch's a former wholesale grocer. This was their warehouse. It's actually one of just 2 of the last remaining former warehouse buildings on this branch of the river. In other words, it gives you a decent idea of what the river's architecture used to look like back when Chicago was a big industrial city. You could take pretty much the major features of this building, with the exception of that clock tower, copy and paste them up and down the river, and that would be pretty much what all the buildings used to look like for a long time. A lot of them were all brick and right up to the river's edge so they could easily send and receive goods by boat. Next on the right after the bridge, you got another tall, modern, sleek, green glass skyscraper. The Reed Murdoch Center is an office building these days. That's an office building, obviously much more modern. This green color of the glass is another good example of contextualism. Remember, that's when a building's design is inspired by what's around it. In this case, the green color of glass mimics the green color of the river. So another good example of contextualism later on the river, but the river is certainly an inspiration for a lot of the buildings on the tour. As a fun side note, I suppose I should also add, I'm sure some of you are aware that every St. Patrick's Day since the 1960s, Chicago has dyed this river a beautiful bright neon, probably radioactive, Kelly green. This is the normal color of the river, though. This lovely emerald color comes from an algae that grows in it. As for the green building, it's also green in an environmental sense. This is one of the most environmentally friendly buildings in the city for 2 major reasons and one actual bad one. The 2 major reasons: it was built of almost all recycled materials that were locally sourced. There's also a rooftop garden that mitigates rainfall. However, controversially, there is a system underneath the building that takes in the water from the Chicago River and uses it to help create the building's air conditioning. Controversial because the water comes back in the river 35 degrees hotter, and we're talking millions of gallons a day, so that interferes with the ecosystem. Also, the building system sucks up fish from the river, so it's a giant fish vacuum. That's bad. Let's move on. Above us to the right, hard to miss it, this was the largest building in the world when it was finished in 1931. It's called the Merchandise Mart, and it's still pretty big. It's got 4 million square feet of space. Hard to wrap your head around how big that is, so I'll give you some help. You might know the tallest building in Chicago is the Sears, or maybe you call it the Willis Tower. It's got the same square footage, so imagine taking all 110 floors of our tallest building, smashing them down, and spreading it out over 2 entire city blocks. This is what it would look like. The building is so large it had its own zip code up until 2008. It's called the Merchandise Mart because it used to be home to tons of merchandise. This is the other one of the 2 remaining former warehouses. It was originally the warehouse for Marshall Fields, big department store founded in Chicago. That's why you got those heads on top of pedestals in front of the building. They honor a lot of the nation's best-known former retailers like Marshall Field. For a long time, though, the building's been mostly office space, and 40% of the structure has long been showrooms for new high-end fashions in home furnishings. How high-end? You could easily spend over $2,000 in there on a single faucet. I don't think I need to say this, but I have 0 faucets in my house from the Merchandise Mart. You can also get great faucets from Home Depot for a couple $100. But would they be as stylish? Yes. It's a faucet. Nobody cares. Looking ahead of us now, you can see the area where all 3 branches of our river system come together. Main branch is behind us mostly now. South branch is ahead to the left. North branch curves around to the right. There's been a lot of stuff built around here the last 10 years. If you're unfamiliar with the river, unfamiliar with the city, let me tell you what's new around here. There's been a lot of changes. There are 3 steel and glass towers to your right that were not here 10 years ago. You can see 2 of them. Straight ahead of us, that building was not here 10 years ago, nor was the most amazing building in this area, the one ahead of us to the left after the Lake Street Bridge. You can see why it's so amazing. Its base is incredibly narrow. The widest part of that building's base, I'll say that again, the widest part is 39 feet wide, and yet the tower is 720 feet tall. The architects that designed the building had never played Jenga. This is the worst designed building you'll ever see in your entire life. It's incredibly dangerous to look at it, take pictures of it, breathe in its direction. Do not point at it, sir. Obviously, it's perfectly safe. There's a lot more to say about it, though, so I'll catch it again as we head towards the South Branch in about 10 minutes. For now, though, just some basic facts. That's an office building from 2017, known by its address, 150 North Riverside. All right, entering the North Branch.